I feel like for the most part, the media really puts most of us off as bad people. I mean, a lot of times a white person and the Arab will do the same exact thing, and the white person, they won't really blame him, say it's not his fault, and the Arab gets called a terrorist and other mean stuff, and other people view us off of what the media says.
That's a really good answer. Has it ever like affected you personally? Yes or no? Like racism.
Me personally, I don't think so, but I've seen it affect others.
Hmm.
I mean, I've seen a lot of people get called terrorists and just get attacked and cyberbullied and bullied in general, and it's awful.
Do you think a large part of racism towards Arabs is due to the media?
100% because a lot of people aren't really educated on like political topics and stuff. So as soon as they hear something from the news, they're automatically gonna believe it no matter what it is. And a lot of the media is like skewed towards, racism towards Arabs right now with the whole like terrorist organizations going around. So I feel like people just listen to the news and just believe everything they hear.
Okay, good answer. How common do you think racism towards Arabs in Toledo is, and how do you think it affects the culture?
I don't think in Toledo it's very common as in many other places just because we're very diverse and we're pretty close to Dearborn, which has like the largest number of Arabs in like a city in the country. So it's a pretty diverse area, so not a lot of racism goes around. And I feel like if anything were to happen, a lot of people would step in. So I feel like compared to a lot of places, it's like pretty cultured, not too bad.
Yeah. Okay, and our last question for you is, have you personally ever been affected by racism here by anyone or maybe by a group?
Not by like individual people, but definitely like, you get stares, you get like little things here and there, little like whispers from people in the airport. I've had like items taken and broken because of like, from what I believe to be just discrimination that shouldn't have been there. So nothing like too dramatic like you see in the news. Again, like I said, because it's very diverse here, but there definitely have been occasions.
All right, cool, good answers, and thank you.
Yes.
Those are perfect.
So even though you were young when it happened, do you think 9/11 had a strong impact on your life or maybe your family's life?
Yeah, definitely. Just in the way of how people like, view you now that you like walk around and stuff and you're a blatant Muslim. And also, my dad's first name's Usama, so after that happened, he changed his name, like his work name, his professional name to John, so it'd be easier for him to like deal with clients and stuff like that. So maybe if that entire incident didn't happen, my dad could go by his actual name.
As Dr. Arish Barkat said in the article, the impact of Arab American ethnic identity on the consumption of culture-specific products. Arab Americans are really valuable to the economy as there are a lot of places that are dedicated to Arab Americans, specifically like Mona Market, Toledo Market, Middle East Market, so they're very valuable to the economy. And there's another article by Dr. Al-Said talking about narrowing the gap between like the Arabic culture and the Arabic culture and the American tradition. So basically, Arab Americans are just like really nice people that don't deserve any like hatred or racism against them because they're really just trying to fit in with the American culture.
Jamal, Rami, how do you think the media portrays Arabs?
For the most part, I would say the way the media depicts the Muslim population, especially in the Arab community, is definitely in a negative light. That just has to do with propaganda in terms of, possibly the American agenda, which is sad because a lot of people get their information from the news, on television, and as a result, that's the kind of information that they have.
To my personal opinion, I believe there's a dark cloud over the Arab population here in the United States, kind of a stigma that we are cheaters and dirty people, and that's obviously connected solely to the way the media blasts us and the news.
You were young when 9/11 occurred, but post 9/11, do you think it affected your life in any way or your family's possibly?
Absolutely. The one thing that kind of comes to mind more than anything else is airport security, obviously. Especially when you go there and your last name, is Ahmed or I'm Zuhair Ahmed, it definitely, brings up red flags to the TSA. A lot of times you get, randomly pulled over to kind of get checked out. It's kind of just things you have to deal with, and I've kind of gotten used to them. That doesn't mean that they're right necessarily, but it's just the way it is, and that is as a result been caused by the terrible attacks of 9/11.
Attitudes towards Muslim Americans post 9/11 by Musrat Khan and Catherine Eklund. The article speaks about how Muslims have dealt with discrimination after 9/11. A couple of the people we interviewed have brought up how airport security was a lot more harsh on them and treated them differently after. One person specifically mentioned how they broke some of their belongings and didn't really care about it. There's also mentioned that some people changed their names after 9/11 so that they would deal with business better and be able to communicate with others without having any negative backlash towards them. They also said, well, all of them also said about how the news portrayed Muslims and Arabs at a different and a negative light after, and this made a lot of people have different views towards Muslims and Arabs in general.
As Rami mentioned, a struggle he faced was racial profiling at the airport. I wanted to reflect upon Jawad Walid's article, Anything to Fit In, the Struggles of an Arab American. He described racial profiling as a structural problem that is sanctioned by the legal system. After 9/11, the no-fly list was established, and it's a form of legally endorsed racial profiling. The problem with it is the numerous cases of false positive matches on the no-fly list, and it's turned many Arab and Muslim lives into living hell. It's held people up from hours to even days. Jawad Walid also mentioned how racial profiling manifests itself in many different ways here for Arab Americans. For instance, job seekers with ethnically sounding names are deprived from their chance to pursue the American dream.
I think that the media has played a role in kind of how people view Muslims or Arabs in general.
There's actually kind of a tricky question, just because when you look at the news nowadays, it's all about the bad in the Arabs and not the good. So obviously people are going to associate every single Arab with being a terrorist. So that's just kind of concerning.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do you think that racism in Toledo kind of differs from other areas in the United States?
I really don't think, well actually I didn't think that there was any racism in Toledo particularly, just because there's a lot of Mediterranean restaurants and everyone always goes to them and everyone's always speaking highly of each other. And then yeah, I'm just gonna let you ask the next question.
Has racism ever affected you personally?
So there was this garage situation with some nasty words on the garage, and someone came and just said some nasty stuff with a swastika, and that was pretty awful. But the Toledo community really showed a lot. I wasn't expecting this from anyone, but the comments I was reading on Facebook and stuff like that really made me feel loved, and by my neighbors and even people from California, and the whole garage thing really went viral more than I was expecting. And yeah, the Toledo community is just really good, and everyone sent flowers and cookies, and they just really made me feel welcomed.
The vandalism done to May's house is a clear act of discrimination. Even in 2017, racism is still occurring frequently every day in different communities, such as Toledo. It's most commonly done towards Arab and African Americans. As Hayoun Massoud said from Al Jazeera in his article, Arab Americans Lead the Charge for U.S. Civil Liberties, he spoke about how Trump becoming president really belittled a lot of Arab Americans. We were looked at poorly, we were treated unjustly. People mocked us, whether in person or on social media. But then it allowed for cohesion and unity between not only Arab Americans, but people from just the communities. From what May said, you can see that after the vandalism to her garage occurred, that a lot of people came together, and it wasn't just Arabs. In fact, it was mostly just people from her community, and it didn't matter the race, and it just brought unity, and that's what we're seeing. I wanted to reflect upon the article by Detroit Journalism Cooperative, Arabs and African Americans, a complicated relationship between solidarity and bigotry. It's explained how racism towards African Americans has been going on for 500 years, while racism towards Arabs and Muslims has really increased after 9/11, where we saw the rise of Islamophobia and the anti-Arab sentiment. They reflect upon how Arab and African American communities and other minority groups have formed unity, allyships, through things such as organizations. Chairman of the Arab American Civil Rights League, Nasser Beydoun, had a very, very powerful statement that was quoted in this article. We don't have the numbers to fight this battle on our own, so we have to form bonds with all communities of color. As May mentioned, people from her community came together and repainted her garage with the kind words, "Toledo Hearts Arabs." As the article explains, and as we see in this incident that occurred with May, acts like this towards Arabs may represent discrimination and hate, but it brings different people from all over the community together and causes unbreakable bonds between completely different members of the community.